loved it. I'll send you a copy. Bam! Bitch went down.
Okay, and welcome back to Horror Queers. We're doing the old horror movie. Gay horror movie? Not really in this case, but yeah, we're doing it, right? I'm Joe.
And I'm Trace.
I try to shake it up every week just to, give you a start.
So I did tell someone that we were doing Oculus tonight, which, by the way, we are covering Oculus on this episode, Mike Flanagan's Oculus. And they were like, well, there's nothing queer or campy about that movie. And I was like, I know. Just wait and we'll tell you. We're going to get there. So we have a reason for covering this movie.
But also, it's our fucking podcast and we're going to do whatever the hell we want. And it's the 5th year anniversary of this film.
Yeah, we've been covering a lot of anniversaries recently, but honestly, it kind of works out that they're all things that are relevant to us. So yeah, I'll just kind of dive right in because I have so many good things to say about this wonderful little movie. So Oculus was released in theaters on April 11th, 2014, after premiering at TIFF in September 2013. Released by Relativity Media, who has... If anyone is familiar with the saga of Mike Flanagan's Before I Wake, they are the studio that was having money problems and why that movie took like 3 years to get released.
Ooh, we're always slinging shit.
Yes. But they got bought out, I think, and they're like functioning now. So good for them. We got a budget of $5 million on this one. And I think this is one of the earlier Blumhouse produced movies. So, it was filmed in 2012. I think Insidious was the first big one in 2010. So it kind of tracks. Opening weekend rank. So this movie opened up against Captain America, The Winter Soldier, and Rio 2. So it didn't really have a chance at being number 1. But it did open it up at number 3 with $12 million, which, made double its money back opening weekend, which is something we've seen from these Blumhouse movies, I think, as we've talked about them.
Oh, just a few times.
Just a couple. It went on to gross $27.7 million domestically and $16.3 million internationally for a worldwide gross of $44 million. So almost 9 times its budget, which... not bad. Oculus, not bad.
It's probably why Flanagan continues to get lots of work, because he can make really good movies on the cheap.
Well, and that'll be something we discuss too, because I did watch the commentary today. Or I listened to it, watched it. I mean, you listen to the commentary as you watch the movie. Whatever.
You watched it with your ears.
Yes. And I won't go into too much detail because it's just mostly technical jargon, but he kind of explains his process and how he does things and how he can do things for cheap sometimes. And it's really kind of interesting. If y'all have never heard Mike Flanagan do an interview or do a commentary or anything, I highly recommend just looking for a video. He cares about his craft. He loves horror. He loves his job. And I think it translates very well into his movies. Whatever you think about Oculus or everything else he's done.
Spoiler alert, this episode's going to be a gush fest.
It is. And I know that when we do movies like this, that because I know a lot of people that, not a lot, but a good chunk of people that don't connect with Flanagan's material. I know a lot of people that are like, oh, he does movies that are fine. Actually, even Stacey Ponder, who
I was going to say, you're subtweeting Stacey Ponder right now, aren't you?
No. I'm not. Honestly, it's not even her that's on my mind. There's a couple of people on my Facebook feed that I actually I just unfriended someone for making a post saying that Mike Flanagan is overrated and all of his movies are garbage, and I legit unfriended that person.
Trace will come for you, people. He will come for you.
I got actively upset, and I was a little drunk when it happened, but I don't regret unfriending this person.
Recurring theme on the podcast. Trace makes interesting decisions while intoxicated.
Which is why I'm not drinking tonight. I'm only drinking coffee. So if I'm actually sounding a little speeded out right now, it's because I'm drinking coffee at 9 o'clock at night.
Boo. Give the audience what they want. They want drunk Trace. They don't want high Trace.
Y'all can let me know. Let me know what you prefer. If you liked how I sounded in Ravenous and Stage Fright, then we'll go with that, and I'll start drinking more on the podcast. If you didn't like those 2 episodes, then I'll stop drinking on the podcast. Not actually stop drinking ever. Anyway, so going into reception. So this is why I kind of want to jump to this movie's defense. So critic score is actually fairly high at 74%. And out of TIFF, this was getting rave reviews. It was insane. And this isn't Mike Flanagan's first film. It's his second feature. He did a one before this called Absentia, which isn't one of my favorites of his. my husband loves it. Like, I think whenever we do a movie night, he always wants to show Absentia. And I'm like, it's not really like a movie night type of movie, but...
That's not a crowd pleaser.
It's not, I mean, yeah. Well, neither is this one, though. This movie isn't a crowd pleaser. And I was actually struck on this, I don't know, probably my 5th viewing of Oculus, on just how tragic the whole thing is. Anyway, so you got your audience score of 53%. So this movie was polarizing for audiences, and I really do want to go into why that might have been the case. And I'm also going on to that because the Metacritic score for critics was 61 out of 100, but the user score was 3.4 out of 10.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah.
So regular people did not like this.
Yeah, but I really think it's the curse of the sad ending. Sad ending movies typically, like, don't do as well with audiences.
See, poor Prodigy. Oh, spoiler.
So, yes, as I mentioned, directed by Mike Flanagan and written by Mike Flanagan and Jeff Howard. Now, they're a duo... So, Mike Flanagan, in case you didn't know, he's done such wonderful movies like Absentia, Hush, Before I Wake, Ouija 2, Gerald's Game, and the upcoming Dr. Sleep, and maybe this tiny show that y'all have heard on Netflix called The Haunting of Hill House. He directed all 10 episodes.
Wait, do you call it Ouija or Ouija?
Ouija, like Weejee.
Okay.
Wait, what do you say?
I always thought it was Ouija.
I don't know. My parents always said Ouija.
Okay. Regional dialect differences, perhaps?
I've seen, I don't know, maybe it's Louisiana. I've seen both of those movies, and I don't remember the first one at all. Like,
I've heard everyone and their dog is like, do not see this movie, repress this movie, forget this movie.
The thing with Ouija, the first one is, it's not the dumpster fire it's made out to be. It's just so fucking forgettable. Like, I mean, all I remember is that, fucking that dude from, Stage Fright's in it, and so is Olivia Cooke. And that's about it.
Oh, that guy. Yeah.
But yeah, whatever. Ouija 2, which is actually like Ouija 0 because it's a prequel, is super good. And I remember when I'm going to toot my own horn here. I did meet Mike Flanagan when he was premiering Hush at South by Southwest.
Ooh la la.
And I got to interview him and Jason Blum, and and this is about 6 months before Ouija 2 came out. And they showed me a clip, and I was like, I felt bad because I was like, oh, Flanagan, like, what did you do to get stuck with the sequel to this terrible movie? And then, of course, lo and behold, it turned out to be really good. So, yeah. But, yeah, so him and Jeff Howard co-wrote this movie, and they actually have co-written a lot of Flanagan's films. They co-wrote Before I Wake, they co-wrote Ouija, they co-wrote Gerald's Game, some Hill House episodes, as Jeff Howard wrote, and they also co-wrote the script together for the remake of I Know What You Did Last Summer, which has not been produced yet.
No. And yet we're all waiting for it.
I asked him about it. I mean, he says that's the question he gets asked about all the time, is what is happening with I Know What You Did Last Summer? And he just...
Which means he's not allowed to answer.
Well, he basically... Well, again, this is back in 2015, 2016. He basically said, we're done with it. Like, the script is done. We've turned it in. It's just waiting for a studio to make it. And he's like, I really like what we did with it. We did something very different. And after seeing what he did with Hill House and how he changed that story using elements of the original novel, I'm really intrigued to see what he did with it, or what him and Jeff Howard did with it. But
I'm kind of flabbergasted that there's a script by him. In all the success that he's had in the last couple of years, there's a script by him sitting on somebody's desk going unproduced. Like, that seems bonkers to me.
I'm going to guess, and I could be totally wrong, after the lack of success for Scream 4, I don't think studios want to make slashers right now. And I know we don't really get into the technical aspects of, like, the crew very often, but I did just want to point out that Flanagan is a very loyal filmmaker. He tends to use the same people on every job. So first of all, he edits all of his own movies. So on any Mike Flanagan movie, you're going to see editor Mike Flanagan. And that is very evident in this movie, which, I know we've talked about how I don't notice editing that much, but this movie, I noticed the editing just because of the seamless transitions between time periods.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the composers were the Newton brothers, which they also did Hush, Before I Wake. I mean, literally every movie we've been talking about, the Newton brothers did the score for all those movies. Cinematographer Mike Fimignari, he did all of them as well. He's also doing the upcoming Dr. Sleep, and Mike Flanagan editing everything. So if people don't like Mike Flanagan's style, which I have heard people say, it's probably not going to change. But anyway, very recognizable style. A lot of long takes on Steadicam, especially in the beginning of this movie. So yeah, recognizable style. You'll see it, or if you've seen episodes 4 and 5, or episode 5 and 6 of Hill House. Yes. So very small cast here, but recognizable faces, especially now. Maybe not as much in 2014. But you got Karen Gillan, who at the time was most famous for Doctor Who, and now people might... I've never seen Doctor Who.
She's really good in it.
I know her name is Amy Pond. That's all I know. And now, of course, people may know her as Nebula from Guardians of the Galaxy, or as Ruby Roundhouse from Jumanji, Welcome to the Jungle, which is really good.
Mm-hmm. Lots of fun.
Yes. And then, of course, Brenton Thwaites is Tim, her brother Tim. I just realized I really haven't seen him in much, but he was in the Giver adaptation, and I did watch him in DC's Titans, where he plays Robin.
Yeah, spoiler for me, he fucking sucks in everything I've ever seen him in.
Oh, Gauntlet Throne.
He is the Britt Robertson of male actors, in that he keeps getting chances to kickstart things, and then they just flop because he's absolutely terrible.
I don't know why I gasped like that, because honestly, I mean, I like Britt Robertson, but she kind of doesn't.
She sucks.
Yeah, she's not great.
Like, everything that she's in, you're just like, you're garbage. But she keeps getting chances. It's like Scott Eastwood keeps getting chances, and then this guy keeps getting chances.
Well...
And I won't apologize for it.
I think Thwaites is fine in this movie. I just think because he has to play just mopey and sad the whole time.
Yeah, or confused.
Or confused, yeah. And on that level, I think he does fine. But Karen Gillan obviously has the meteor role of the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Then as their parents, you have Rory Cochrane as Alan, who was in Dazed and Confused, Empire Records, Scanner Darkly, and Argo. I've seen 2 of those movies, but I don't remember him in any of them.
Oh my god, I love him from Empire Records.
I've never seen Empire Records.
Oh god, I knew you were gonna say that.
I haven't seen Argo or Empire Records. I don't, it's not, like, is Empire Records at all, like, high fidelity? Like, I always get those 2 movies confused, but are they, like, the same thing? Like, it's like people in a record store?
Yes, but a very different kind of tone. I would argue it's a seminal teen film text. It's really good. It's a good mix of comedy and pathos, but, like, every person in that cast all the girls in that cast you will recognize.
Okay.
Because it's got Liv Tyler and Renee Zellweger and Robin Tunney. And Robin Tunney is iconic. She shaves her head in that movie, and she's hilarious.
Okay. Well, I mean, I know Robin Tunney from, you're going to think I'm going to say The Craft, but I'm going to say
because I know you too well.
It's Vertical Limit. The Chris O'Donnell mountain movie. Oh, it's so good. Oh, it's a great suspense film, but not talking about it.
No.
The mom, Marie, is played by Katie Sackhoff, who apparently very well known for Battlestar Galactica, which I've never seen.
It's the height of sci-fi opera.
That is exactly what I've heard from everyone, and it's been on my list to watch forever. And I know it doesn't have that many episodes, so
no, it's only 5 seasons.
Maybe one day. She was also famously decapitated in Halloween Resurrection. Spoilers. And she was also in Riddick, which is I kind of enjoy.
I like Riddick.
Yeah, it's fun. And then just randomly, you have young Kaylee played by Annalise Basso, who was also in Ouija 2. Flanagan also likes to reuse the same cast members. She was also in last year's Slender Man, which I didn't see. Poor choice on her part. And the ghost in this movie, the main ghost, which I did not know until watching this movie, is played by Kate Siegel, a.k.a. Mike Flanagan's wife, a.k.a. Theo from Haunting of Hill House and the Deaf Mute Woman from Hush.
I only knew it because I was looking up the cast call, and I was like, oh, okay. But her character name is Marisol, and I get a vaguely kind of Latina vibe from that. And I was like, is she? Is this just a weird thing? Is it me? Is it Maybelline? Maybe she's born with it? I don't know. So, Joe, before we dive into the specifics of this movie, what is this about? All right. So, for those of you who have not seen Oculus in a hot minute, here is your plot recap. After an opening scene in which 2 children try to escape a house at gunpoint, Tim, Brenton Thwaites, is discharged from a mental institution after serving 10 years. His doctor encourages him to connect with his sister Kaylee, Karen Gillan, but encourages him to put his own recovery first. Kaylee is at the auction house eyeing the sale of an old mirror, the Lasser glass, before she meets Tim. Over lunch, she launches into a discussion about the mirror and her plan to kill it. Kaylee prompts Tim to meet her at their old family home that night. Scenes in the present day are intercut with the past, which document the decline of their family due to the mirror's subversion. Father Alan, Rory Cochrane, and Mother Marie, Katie Sackhoff, both eventually went crazy. Mary became convinced that Alan was having an affair with a woman named Marisol and had to be sequestered to the bedroom. Alan began spending all of his time in the study with the mirror, neglecting the children and his wife. It is eventually revealed that he chained Marie to the wall, and then on the night that opened the film, both mother and father attacked and nearly murdered the children. Alan ultimately killed Marie when she regained her senses, and Tim shot his father when he attempted to strangle Kaylee. That's the dad, not Tim, who was strangling Kaylee.
Yeah.
In the present day, Kaylee has devised a system to capture the mirror's impact in order to clear her brother's name. She has cameras recording the whole setup and multiple fail-safes in place to remind them to eat and drink, as well as timed phone calls from her fiancé, Michael Dumont, James Lafferty, who was not on the call sheet, but people might know from One Tree Hill. She also has battery-operated lights for when the power goes out. As the night progresses, the mirror's hallucinatory effects increase, and the past and present collide in increasingly frequent and alarming ways. Ultimately, Tim decides to activate the kill switch to shatter the mirror without realizing that he is actually, spoiler, 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 impaling his sister. The film ends as Tim is again taken into custody, this time for his sister's murder, as the dead family members watch from inside.
I just watched the movie twice. So I watched this last night. And I was like, fuck, this is sad. And then I watched the commentary again. And, like, the commentaries with Flanagan and producer Trevor Macy. And Trevor Macy has also produced pretty much all of Flanagan's films, starting with Oculus moving forward. He didn't do Absentia. And they don't offer any solace on the ending. They don't offer why, like, they decided to end it on such a downer note. They just say, yep, that's it. Like, Karen Gillan had to sit there under that, pinned to that mirror for an hour while we, like, redid fake blood in her mouth and shot her from a bunch of different angles.
Well, I mean, the film really does lay out, like, it tips its hand from almost the very beginning. So there's a sense that they are probably doomed for failure. Like, it's strange. I've seen a bunch of reviews from regular people, I'm putting those in air quotes, saying, I don't know why they just didn't shatter the mirror right at the beginning before the mirror could really, like, begin working their magic. And I'm like, A, because of movies, and B, because the whole point is that she's actually trying to capture its effect. But as soon as she starts going through the 300-year history and how many people, like, we're talking more than 40 people have died by this thing.
Right.
Like, their chances seem very slim that they are going to manage to pull this off. So you get the sense that they are either going to fail or that they're going to die trying.
Well, and you've also got Chekhov's anchor, like, from the very beginning. Like, it's like, that is happening. But I do think, and I've seen that complaint before, and also, like, why don't they just leave? Like, especially once they get out of the house, because they do leave the house at one point. But yes, the motive for her trying to capture everything works for me. Mm-hmm. And like you said, if they didn't do that, there wouldn't be a fucking movie. But I also think that the movie does a very good job at making the audience believe as to, like, why they don't ever leave. And even when they do leave the house and they're drawn back in, because again, they see themselves inside standing next to the mirror under that anchor.
And that scene is fantastic.
It's so good. And I don't know if anything in this movie is, like, really scared me, but a lot of it creeped me out. Oh, actually, no, I'm sorry. Katie Sackhoff's face with her broken teeth really freaked me out. That scared me.
It's icky. One of the jump scares early on got me too. I will fully confess that.
Which one?
It's actually the really early one when I think it's adult Kaylee is looking at the mirror and then she turns around and her dad's right there and he grabs her by the throat.
Yes. So, okay. Tiny tidbit that I did learn is that, so there were a couple of scenes added to the movie after principal photography was done. So basically they finished filming the movie, and I guess weeks or months later they learned that they had a couple extra days to go back and shoot scenes that they didn't have time, because this was a 24-day shoot, and the script was anywhere from 110 to 115 pages long, which is pretty long for a script. So that scene where it's basically a nightmare sequence because she wakes up immediately after that was added, and you can tell the scenes that are added because her hair is different. By the time they had reshot these scenes, Karen Gillan had cut her bangs, and so they had to do different hair on her. So that's extra. The scene where the dad rips his fingernail off is extra.
Oh, I like that one.
Yes.
That one makes me squirm.
It makes Mike Flanagan squirm too. He never intended to show the fingernail, but the producer Trevor Macy was all about the gore. As such was the light bulb biting. Whenever he that wasn't an extra scene, that was always included. But he wanted to just have the glass shatter and fall on the floor, but the producer stepped in and said, no, we have to show this glass in her mouth.
Yes, and honestly, I approve of that call. Because watching her dig that shard of glass out of her mouth is, it's perfection. I love it.
Yes, and that brief shot of the mom eating the plate, that was added in after the fact as well, because they wanted to give a reason as to why her teeth were all fucked up.
Yeah, that's grody.
So yeah, where do you want to start?
Let me start with an interesting aside.
Okay.
So we've not done that many episodes of this, so people may or may not know this about me, but there's a couple of things that really bother me about film and TV. And this film actually has 2 of them, and it's still a 4.5 out of 5 for me.
Oh.
So, yeah, which I think is a testament to how well the film is crafted and acted and edited and all these other things. But this film has 2, I think out of like 3 things that really fucking get my goat. The first one is when they tell you the ending at the start, and then they just kind of work towards it. Like,
yeah.
More or less tell you how this film is going to end repeatedly, especially the flashback stuff. They're like, yeah, you killed your dad because your dad shot your mom.
Okay.
And you're like, okay. And then we spend the entire rest of the movie working towards that. And then the other one is having a character in a horror film do nothing but question the validity or the reality of that. So the whole time where she's like, yeah, this mirror, like, killed, everyone as well as our parents. And he's like, there's a logical explanation. I'm just going to be a doubting Thomas. And typically that really, really annoys me. But in this film, I felt like it worked because of the sibling tension. And also because it allows you to get through that entire really heavy exposition dump of like, here's the history of the entire mirror.
Okay, I'm going to respond to that. But before I tackle that, what is the third thing that bothers you? That's not in this movie. Like, what is another thing that like really gets your goat in movies?
I mean, admittedly, it's kind of a derivation of the first one, but it's actually when you start at the end, and then it's like 24 hours earlier.
Yeah, no, I get that. TV shows do that a lot, and I hate that.
Yeah, Alias used to do it all the time, and it's insane. Actually, J.J. Abrams still does that all the time in his films.
He does.
Mission Impossible 3, Star Trek.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, learn how to tell a story that doesn't tell me the fucking end in the opening scene. And also, get rid of those lens fucking flares.
Well, Mike Flanagan doesn't use lens flares, so at least we don't have to criticize that today.
I'm apparently the angry one on this podcast now.
No. But I mean, again, you still gave this a 4.5, and this movie's a 4.5 for me too. I honestly had forgotten what I had given it, but then when I re-logged it in my Letterboxd last night, I was like, oh, good, I gave this a 4.5. Like I was right. So with telling you the end of the story at the beginning, or at least the end of the past, the children's story.
Yes.
It works because it's early on when they have that the dinner scene when Kaylee first asked the dad, like, oh, who was that lady that was in your office? I actually really liked this family. And even though I was distracted from being constantly reminded of, oh, these parents are both going to be dead by the end of this story, because I was interested in watching them exist. And that's something that I think Flanagan is really good at, is writing believable, likable characters, even though the dad is kind of like a douchebag for most of the movie.
Yeah, I was actually, I had foggy memories of this. I didn't see it when it came out in theaters. I saw it on video, and I couldn't remember how much of the parents we saw before they start to go crazy. And really, it's only a couple of scenes. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, I noticed that they're actually kind of already bickering, even in those early, like in that early dinner scene where Katie Sackhoff is kind of sort of joking with her husband, like, oh, what's going on? What's happening? Like,
who was that woman in your office?
Yeah, like there's some friction and some tension, which I think also helps to tell the arc of their story. They're not this picture perfect ideal couple a la Amityville Horror, where, everything's perfect and then they move into this house and it destroys them. Like, this, I think, has much more fully fleshed out, realized characters than a lot of other haunted possession kind of films.
I mean, just kind of like about the ending, like, because, you were told the whole time, oh, like, Tim shot his dad. But I like that they add in that bit where the dad's the one that pulls the trigger, even though the son is holding the gun. So it's something that in lesser hands, I think could make for a very boring film. Like there are times where you could be watching the flashbacks and say, okay, like I want to go back to older Kaylee and older Tem. I want to see what they're doing. But I also think it has to do with the way it's edited, because apparently when they were drafting the script, they didn't always have older Kaylee and older Tim in the house. They were going to have them be like in the basement of the auction house doing their stuff and just cutting between scenes.
Oh, so more like the original short.
Yes. Oh, which I don't know if we mentioned this, but this is based on Mike Flanagan's. No. Sorry, this is based on Mike Flanagan's short film from 2005 called Oculus Chapter 3: The Man with the Plan. It's 30 minutes. It's available on YouTube, but it's also on the Blu-ray for Oculus. Basically, it's just a man in the room with this mirror, and it's kind of like the exposition scene that Kaylee gives for like the first 15 minutes, and then him going crazy for the last 15 minutes.
Only really poorly acted.
Yeah, probably so.
No offense to whoever that guy was, but I was like, you, sir, are no Karen Gillan.
So the scene when Karen Gillan gets the mirror and she's like, hello, you must be hungry, blah, blah, blah. Like there's the man down there like asking her what she wants to do with the mirror. That's him.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's kind of fun.
But that scene was also added weeks after production ended. So yeah, that whole scene where like she like confronts the mirror and like she sees like the mannequins under the sheets behind her, that's all like that wasn't in the original cut.
Admittedly, because this movie also gets a lot of flack for having kind of rote, overly predictable kind of jump scares, and I did feel that in that particular scene where she was basically, I know what you did last summering those mannequins. And I was like, this is okay. But I did like the part where she goes in and she says, how's that crack? I hope it still hurts.
No, it's a great character moment. And I know you mentioned this offline. You asked me, you couldn't tell if you liked Kaylee because it was Karen Gillan or because of the character. And that's not the first time I've heard someone say they didn't like that character.
Yeah, no, I actually think there's a bunch of people who don't like her. And
I don't know why. I like her.
Okay, so here we are. I think we're back actually into familiar territory for you because you like women characters who are not always nice. Like you like a bitch, you like a strong woman, you like an assertive person. And Kaylee is all of those things. Like she's not afraid to be confrontational or direct or authoritative. And I think for some people, they watch that and they're like, she's just too much of a bitch.
Hey, I don't think she is a bitch. I mean,
I don't think so either. Clarifying.
Yeah. So, putting this into perspective, you have Tim who spent the past, I think it's 12 years. I think it's 12 years. Because
it might be 12, sorry.
No, it's okay. The past is 2002 and the movie came out in 2014, even though it was filmed in 2012. So it could be 10, could be 12, whatever.
Oh, sorry. He was 10 when the events happened and it was 12 years ago.
Okay, got it. So Tim has spent the entire time in an institution. Kaylee spent the entire time by herself in the foster system. And I think that even though you don't get to see them live that out, minus the brief moments in the beginning with Tim, it makes sense as to why both of them would be the way they are. And so your issue with like, Thwaites' acting and him, constantly questioning, constantly like, because again, he's just spent 10 years being programmed to like basically change his memory and change his entire thought process.
It's the only way he got out.
Yes. And it wasn't a fake out. He really made himself believe those things. So that makes that whole thing with Tim and questioning her. And also, he's the audience surrogate.
Well, and the other difference is that in this film, when weird shit starts to happen, he stops asking those really stupid questions. It more often like my criticism more often applies to slasher films that are whodunits, where people are just disappearing and, maybe bodies are piling up and somebody's like, no, they probably just went to their aunt's house for the weekend. And you're just like, Jesus Christ, get a fucking clue. Like, I get it. You don't know you're in a horror movie, but at the same time, stop acting like you're an idiot.
Well, and the moment you're talking about, it's the moment when they're arguing and, she almost gives in. And then she looks in the room and, the cameras have moved positions. The plants are dead. And she gives this like, yes. I won. And in the commentary, Flanagan and Macy refer to the film as like split into two halves. There's pre-ha and post-ha. And that's... Apparently the ha was a big point of contention too, because Karen Gillan came up to him and was like, how am I supposed to say this? And like people were questioning him like, does she really have to say this?
Like, ha!
He's like, I don't know, just say like you're a kid who was proved right. Like, ha!
Yeah, because their relationship and to a certain extent their maturation has kind of stalled. Like, she is still 12, he is still 10.
Yeah.
And they're trying to kill Amir.
Yes, absolutely right. And I can get why someone would be frustrated by them as characters because, yeah, they basically are children who are in their early 20s. But I just think that both the writing and those performances do such a good job of making you care about them that it doesn't matter. They're flawed characters, yes, but they're not bad characters.
Yeah, as much as I don't like him, he's fine. I think that the film around him supports him to such a level that at a certain point, his, dare I say it, lack of ability in acting is superseded by Flanagan's technique for shrouding him in interesting visual techniques, in interesting events that are happening, and then you've always got Karen sort of somewhere nearby doing something interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, again, like, I knew that she was Scottish. I did not know that he was Australian. So to also think that these are both foreign actors doing American accents, which, not an excuse. If they were bad, it wouldn't be an excuse. Then that's the casting department's fault. They should have known better. But I still think it's impressive. I think another critique that people offer too is just the fact that I guess people find them to be stupid, but that exposition scene that you mentioned, which goes on for, I want to say, 10 minutes.
It is lengthy, but it's never less than compelling to me.
Exactly. And I promise, this is my last bit of commentary knowledge. No, I really didn't take that many notes in the commentary. And I know because you didn't watch it, you're like, I don't give a fuck. But
it's true. I'm just going to tune out.
No. That is the one part of the script that studios had an issue with. Because it was 15 pages of dialogue between Kaylee and Tim about just exposition. And they thought the audience was going to get bored. And I actually think it's one of the more captivating moments of the film.
Oh, yeah. Like, particularly in the early part of the film. I read a couple of reviews that said that the film actually lags in terms of energy in the second half. But I think a lot of what gives it a boost early on is this particular scene. Because it is absolutely an exposition dump. But, I mean, I'm just going to gush all over Karen.
No, she's
that
great.
Sounded gross. She's amazing, right? And this particular scene, she's got so much energy. She's so passionate. She's so driven by rage and vengeance to get back at this fucking mirror. And she's also like, what can I do to get my brother back on board? But yeah, like, I think it's a great showcase for her as an actress. But I think for the film, this is where it's getting you interested in this. Because otherwise, it's a movie about a fucking killer mirror. Like,
right?
That sounds stupid. Until you get to this where you're like, let me give you the history, because this fucker has killed 45 people.
Well, and also the history is really interesting. Like, it's a creepy story, and it's delivered with such, like, passion from Gillen. Like, I didn't want to look away. I was just like, oh my God, like, what else is happening? And Kaylee, uses the cameras to document everything. Apparently, when Flanagan did his short film, studios this is 2005, studios were bidding on it, or they wanted to buy it, but they all wanted it to be a found footage film.
Oh God, right.
Right. And because this is like right before Paranormal Activity came out. So basically, but Flanagan said, no, I don't want to do that. He could have had this movie financed and backed in 2006. And he didn't get it done until 2012 because he held out on not doing found footage.
It's kind of impressive. Like, good for him as an artist, or an auteur, you might say. But now I'm kind of interested. What would this movie look like as a found footage film?
Well, I'm guessing you wouldn't be able to do the alternate timelines. You would have to just do, like, well, again, because I don't know. I don't think he had a script, for whatever the feature length was going to be. This is just people saying, hey, I like this idea of your short film. Like, make it into a movie, but I want it to be found footage. So it would just be, if it's the same story, Kaylee and Tim just with her cameras. Like, it's just going to be those two cameras, maybe.
Or they do up the entire house or something like that. But yeah, you're right. Yeah. The flashbacks would have to go, unless they had, like, family videos that they had recovered from Betamax or something. Yeah,
but it wouldn't work as always. I think one of the most impressive things about this film is how it weaves the narratives. And to lose that, I can't imagine what this movie would even be like.
Anybody who watches a Mike Flanagan film, one of the things that they will notice about it is that he is obsessed with families.
Yes.
Like, he is all about the the dysfunctional families, the family dynamics, the relationships between parents and children, and
husband and
siblings
wife.
and husband and wife. So I think to reduce this down to just a sibling drama would end up losing a lot of the really interesting meat of the film.
I actually, now that you say that too, I think the only film of his that doesn't deal explicitly with like relationships is Hush. And coincidentally, that's the only film that he co-wrote with his wife and not Jeff Howard.
So the relationship is off the screen.
Yeah.
Well, I got the impression that was more about a showcase for her.
Oh, absolutely. But it never, well, I know we're not talking about Hush, but that movie never feels like it's like, this isn't a Rob Zombie, Sherry Moon Zombie type situation.
Right. Which also, can we never talk about them?
I really like Sherry Moon Zombie.
Oh, that's right. I forget.
I mean, I get the issues, and do I think she's the strongest actress? No, but I just really find something about Sherry Moon Zombie very captivating and magnetic, where I just like watching her kind of like go crazy. Well, I mean, obviously, you know, it's a woman saying fuck and piss and cunt a lot, so of course I like it. Mm-hmm. But obviously, Kate Siegel, much stronger actress than Sherry Moon Zombie.
Just a smidge.
But no, totally on board with you. And that's why, like, when I see that people can't connect with his movies, I'm just very much like, what kind of a childhood did you have? Or what kind of a person are you where you can't watch even Flanagan's weakest film, which I would say is Before I Wake, is still a good movie, in my opinion. I know some people it's kind of like hit or miss for some people. But like, to not be able to connect with these characters and to not sympathize or empathize or like want to see them, you know, make it through. What kind of person? Oh, if you're one of those people listening, I'm really sorry.
Or tweet us and let us know.
Yeah.
What's the disconnect for you?
No, please.
Did you grow up in a foster family? Were you incarcerated in a mental institution for 10 years?
Well, and then
12 years.
Someone did give me an answer this morning on Twitter. They said that they didn't like the way that they don't like Flanagan's style. The way he shoots things, like without really knowing the background of how films are made, like they don't like his camera work. They don't like the aesthetic of his films, which I kind of get, but it's hard to articulate, you know, why something like that doesn't work for you. It's just like, I can say, well, I like it, but I can't really tell you why I like it.
I think you could, if pressed. I mean, I've definitely heard people say that his films aren't scary. And I think that has something to do with the way that they're shot. I don't think he's always great at delivering the scares. You know, we talked about the fact that there's quite a few jump scares in here, but they always feel a little bit predictable. Mm-hmm. And I kind of felt that way in a lot of Hill House as well, where it was kind of like, when is the spooky ghost going to show up?
But there is one great jump scare in Hill House. I think it's in episode 8, and it's in a car. And I mean, I was a little distracted watching it, but then like when this jump scare happened, I lost it. But I agree with you. But then I would say this. I think a lot of the scariest parts in Flanagan's films or his work in general comes not from the jump scares, but it comes from the fact that you can, if you make this emotional attachment to these characters, and even in Ouija, which this is a family of women, and it's I love that family in Ouija, but the scariness comes from fearing for them because you feel like you know these characters. So it's not necessarily I jumped out of my seat, I'm scared. It's more of like this emotional connection that makes you scared for them, I guess, if that makes any sense.
It does, yeah. To me, what you're talking about is dread.
Yes. Oh, yeah. There you go.
Like, I find his films are infused with this sense that you not only know that something terrible is going to happen, but it's going to happen to these people that you're falling in love with, who seem very real, very authentic.
And as we've seen with this movie, and spoiler alert, Ouija Origin of Evil, he's not afraid to kill people, and kill people that you like.
Having just watched a future major motion picture that people will be talking about, I wish that people had bigger balls when it came to offing people that you like on screen.
Yeah. And I mean, granted, with Ouija, like, because it's a prequel and like if you've seen the first one, you know the story and you know how it ends, which, actually, because you've seen Ouija Origin of Evil, right? But you haven't seen...
I have not.
Oh, you haven't seen either one.
My Flanagan oeuvre is actually under 50%.
Wow. Ooh. Well, spoiler
I've got
alert.
homework.
Spoiler alert, Origin of Evil does not have the happiest ending.
Oh, I mean, yeah, prequels, they're either going to go completely happy and it's like, oh, these events are only tangentially related. Here's a doll, put it in your showcase. Or it's like, bad shit happened, nobody got it.
I would recommend, though, even though it sucks, watch the first Ouija just because of Lin Shaye.
God bless Lin Shaye.
It's a struggle, but she does have a connection to the prequel. So I would just say, like, watch it. Anyway, let's go into, I don't know how long we'll have on this discussion, but like, so the reason that, besides the anniversary, that I wanted to pick this movie, and maybe, I don't know if you have the similar thoughts. I find Kaylee and Tim's relationship so relatable because when I came out, and I know I discussed this a little bit on the speed dating episode, my relationship with my parents was strained. I didn't like, I mean, obviously I was still there. They didn't kick me out. They didn't disown me or anything. Like it was not the worst case scenario, but I definitely, stopped wanting to connect with my parents. And I'm 16 years old, you know, it's the beginning of my junior year of high school. And my sister was going through some stuff too. We ended up both being sent to therapy at the same time. And my sister and I never like super got along. Like, and she's almost 2 years younger than me. So I was 16, she was 14. And we bonded a lot after I came out and after she was going through her stuff. And to this day, I think because of us going through really hard times, being alienated from our parents at the same time, it really brought us closer together. And so watching this movie, I'm thinking to myself, okay, if I have a killer mirror, I could see my sister and I having the same dynamic that Kaylee and Tim have in this movie. And I just think that that's something that, and you know, maybe your experience is different, but like when you're coming out, you know, if you don't have a lot of friends, if your parents don't accept you, but your sibling does, because siblings are different than friends. Like, you know, I had friends that were, you know, accepting of me, obviously, but it's different when it's like...
It's not quite the same.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, it's your family. I didn't tell any of my grandparents didn't know, my aunts and uncles, like, no external family knew. It was just my mom, my dad, and my sister. My mom and my dad didn't handle it the best. And my sister did, because she didn't care. And it was just it was so good to have that kind of an outlet. And I think that's probably why I connect with this movie so much, even though there aren't any queer elements, even though, you know, this isn't like someone coming out like Kaylee's not a lesbian, Tim's not gay. It's just to see that connection of like, you know, no one else believes us. No one else understands us, but we understand each other and we believe each other. At least, you know, at post-ha moment with Tim.
Right.
So.
No, I totally get that. Yeah. I mean, I have an interesting relationship with my sister too. We've always been quite close. We've gone through a couple of different things. My grandfather's passing, and we used to spend a lot of time with my grandmother. And then the summer after he passed, she was very, very different. And we went through some oddly traumatic stuff with her because she was grieving and she didn't quite know the way to process it. And she kind of took it out on us. Mm-hmm. But we've always been close. Like, people have mistaken us for romantic partners because we have a kind of language that only we speak. Mm-hmm. My ex-boyfriend was incredibly threatened by my relationship to her because we would confide all kinds of things to each other.
What's your age difference?
Sorry, she is 3 years older than me. But she looks very young, so people frequently think that I'm the older one and she's younger. No,
my sister, you know, being 2 years younger, she was always taller than me because she hit puberty like at like age 9 or 10, whereas I didn't hit puberty until I was like 14. So people always thought we were, well, first they thought we were twins. Then they thought she was the older sister. So I would get the kids menu at restaurants and she would get the adult menu. But yeah. So that was fun. It made me feel very great.
Yeah.
So yeah, continue.
But I get what you mean about that kind of sibling dynamic. And I mean, one of the things that I always knew when I was working on coming out, and I mean, I think I mentioned it on the speed dating, I had a relatively easy coming out. I was really fortunate in that way. But at the time, I didn't know whether or not it was going to be that easy. And I had kind of emergency backup in place. Like, I had my friend waiting in the car in case I got kicked out. But I had kind of workshopped the whole process with my sister well in advance, like just sort of saying, what if this happens, what am I going to do, and that sort of thing. I mean, I think you and I also have the benefit of having a sibling who is close to us in age, so they're more attuned to the times and maybe the shifting political, social, cultural landscape. So that's also very helpful, but I don't know. I'm interested to know if people who have greater age disparities with their siblings disparity with their siblings, or if they're just not as close. Because I know that there's tons of siblings who totally fucking hate each other, who don't get along. You know, they try to go off on one another and make the other person's life hell. I've always felt so incredibly fortunate to have the sister that I do have. We're not quite as close as I would like anymore. And that's partially just because she's got kids. And
do you live in the same... Does she live in Toronto?
No, she lives in Montreal.
Gotcha.
So it's not that far away. Like, she used to live really close and we would still only see each other a couple times a year. But it's always really reassuring to know that if I need someone to tell me, like, shit straight to my face... Yeah. Like, she will be frank with me. She will not sugarcoat it. And she was actually really helpful for that when I came out. She would tell me things that my parents were saying because they would tell her instead of coming to talk to me. And she would be like, this is what they're dealing with. This is how you can address it. Or this is, like, what you need to be aware of.
Yeah, My sister lives in Houston, so it's like a 2.5, 3 hour drive from Austin. But my relationship with my parents is good now. My sister still has a somewhat strained relationship with my mom, because they've just never particularly gotten along. And I actually do want to say, lest people think that I'm throwing my parents under the bus. I actually did kind of spring the gay thing on them, and probably the worst moment I could have done it. Because at the time, like the night that I did it, I remember doing this. We were all at the dinner table. I think it was before dinner. Maybe it was after dinner. I don't know. But they were confronting Haley about certain things that were going on in her life. And
you were like, by the way, I'm gay.
Well,
pass the Brussels sprouts.
I actually made my sister. I was like, can Haley go upstairs to her room? I didn't want to tell them in front of her because I thought that she was gay. I didn't even know why I wanted that to happen. But I guess it was easier to have like one less person there to tell them. And so it was ironic that after I told my parents, which of course, again, they've just been dealing with whatever my sister was going through, and then I dropped that bomb on them. But it was ironic that after that it switched, where I was like, oh, like I should have trusted my sister more and told her first, maybe by herself before I told my parents. I frequently think about how maybe our family would be different had maybe I told her in confidence and then told my parents later. But yeah, hindsight's 20/20.
That's tough too. I mean, sometimes that means that you're asking another person to keep a secret, and that can be really tricky for them. So
yeah, but then
I told my sister because I was like, hey, by the way, I'm gonna torpedo Christmas, so be prepared.
I think my sister was very lonely at the time, so I always wonder, like, you know, I just always wonder if maybe, like, you know, if I had been that confidant to her, if maybe she would have felt less alone and maybe not gone through some of the stuff that she had gone through at the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, she's good now and we're good now, and like it's fine. It was just like, you know, thinking back to 2006, 2005, one of those years. It's like dark days.
Yeah.
So, listeners, this is kind of a long-winded way of I know this is a kind of a segue that's off the movie, but if you're listening to this and, you know, you have kind of a similar relationship or a very different relationship with your sibling, or if it helps you relate to the Kaylee Tim relationship more or even less or whatever, let us know. Shoot us an email, shoot us a tweet, I don't know, join a community. But like, no, like talk, like,
I don't know.
But, and if you don't like this movie because you don't find it relatable, tell us why. I mean, like, this isn't to like to call you out. I'm just legitimately curious because I'm kind of at a point where I'm like, I don't understand how someone couldn't relate to this movie but obviously that's reductive because people have different experiences. So
very true. So tell me, do you find that point that I made earlier, that some people suggest the film lags as it heads into its the last act, I guess. Does that apply to you or no?
It doesn't. Honestly, I think the only part of the movie where I kind of rolled my eyes is whenever she accidentally kills her fiance. I don't need that.
It's an odd piece.
I don't need that scene. I think you could leave that out and just have the fiance just not be in the movie after the beginning of the movie and it'd be fine. And It's not a long. I think it's like 140. It's an hour 45. I think is what it is.
Yeah, about that.
And it doesn't really lag for me, but it's mostly because you're watching two different movies. Maybe it's because I'm into the filmmaking process, but I like seeing how it's done. So I was never bored, but the narrative never bored me either. I mean, did you find that it lagged?
I do feel like it has a slightly different energy in that second half. Like when they start to lose power, when the kind of past and present hallucinations start to merge together a little bit more. I sometimes find that the present day stuff, because they're also often more separated because they're kind of reliving their own experiences. And while that is interesting to watch, like seeing them almost engage with their younger selves There's that moment where he opens the door and like comes face to face with his younger self in his bedroom. And even like the way that is shot is interesting because for a minute I think you're meant to wonder whether or not the two of them are actually going to interact, or is it just him remembering? Because part of this is that the mirror's powers are a little bit malleable. So you know that it fucks with the way that people see things, and then there's obviously the timing. But in this case, it seems like a huge component of the things that they're dealing with are actually their own memories, as well as whatever shit the mirror is putting them through.
Okay, so two things. So one, I do find that the older, so much like how, you know the ending of the younger story before, at the beginning of the movie. So for me, the first half, I'm more invested in older Kaylee and Tim. But for the second half of the movie, I'm more invested in younger Kaylee and Tim, which again is a testament to this script and these performers, because you already know how these kids are going to end up. But I was so much more involved in, crazy chained up Katie Sackhoff choking the hell out of her daughter.
Yes.
It's so insane. But that's also because, like for the last half of the movie, older Kaylee and Tim were just kind of watching things play out until Kaylee gets killed by the anchor. And the other thing I wanted to bring up, which is a little bit different, is the powers of the mirror. I do think I've seen people complain about how they're ill-defined, or it just means that everything you see could be fake. And I'm like, well, yeah, like that's the point.
It's kind of the point.
Like basically from the moment that, something happens kind of early on and you're like, oh, like literally everything, the whole movie, it's not even like unreliable narrator. The movie itself is unreliable. And that's kind of why the movie's never boring to me. Because you're always trying to figure out, even though you never will. I mean, like, honestly, you can't fully know. I mean, I have a pretty good idea that almost everything in this movie doesn't happen except for her killing the boyfriend.
Which is arguably one of the reasons why that scene both does and doesn't work. Because it could just as easily be a hallucination. Like, they could have ended that with, like, the boyfriend being outside the house, and you would have been like, oh, yeah, okay, so she didn't actually kill him. Like, because her realization occurs when she holds up the phone and she sees him, but you've also seen that phone is unreliable. Like, I mean, it's one of the things, like, she's got a huge amount of hubris, which is kind of the reason why it gets her into trouble and she ends up dead, because she assumes that she can outsmart the mirror. And the mirror proves to me in that particular scene that she's fucked. Like, her reliance on cell phones and phone calls and that kind of stuff, you're like, no, you haven't thought this through. This mirror will get you.
One thing that I did find genuinely creepy, and I would even say scary, when they're kids, they keep trying to call the doctor, and the doctor and they call different doctors, but it's always the same one that answers, and he says, oh, like, have your father call.
Right. And
it happens after she kills the fiance, and they walk outside and they call the cops, and they see themselves inside, but then the same voice goes, but it's like a creepy kind of distorted voice, and it's like, have your father
so
call.
Monotone too.
It's creepy. I literally just got chills like thinking about it.
You did? Yeah, you gave it to me long distance. This is like some unfriended shit.
Oh man. But okay, I just want to recap though. I think she has a fair reason to have hubris, because this is the rundown of what she does to have precautions. She has 3 cameras, each on independent power circuits, videotaping the room and the mirror. She has private landlines, and Kaylee controls all electronic devices. An alarm goes off every 45 minutes to remind her to change the tapes in the camera. An alarm goes off every hour to remind them to eat. They're fully stocked on water to prevent dehydration. Each room is filled with its own thermostat, from which data will record fluctuations in temperatures. Anything greater than 5 degrees will set off an alarm. Her fiancé calls her every hour plants are laid out to see when they die, and test the radius of influence, quote unquote, of the mirror. And she has that fucking anchor tied to a timer every 30 minutes. If she doesn't reset the timer, it will fall and crush the mirror. That's a lot of precautions. And, but you're right, but she did underestimate the mirror. She didn't understand the full capability of its power.
To me, there's one piece where it's a little bit frustrating to me. I don't know if it's a mistake on behalf of the screenplay or if it's meant to be an example of her misunderstanding it. But at one point he goes to make a call and she's like, you can't take calls in here because you can't trust anything that happens. Yeah. And then that's when the fiance calls and she takes the call and she's like, you need to like call me on time. And I'm like, bitch, you just said you can't take a call in here.
Yeah, that might be a script laziness issue. Not laziness, but yeah, that's probably a script issue.
Yeah. It's a minor point, but part of me, knowing what happens, having watched this a couple of times, I was like, girl, like, you need to keep better track of this because as soon as they both start to go down the rabbit hole, you're like, ugh. Like, well, there were signs you needed to take further precautions. Okay, so then I'm going to ask this. Let's say the roles were reversed and we had someone that wasn't Brenton Thwaites. It was an actor that you liked. In the Kaylee role of being kind of the cocky, like, I've got this mirror. It's mine. Do you think audiences would be as hard on this man character being hubris and cocky, having hubris and, being cocky as opposed to a woman? That's a really interesting question because I think the film benefits from having a stronger, more interesting female. Not just because it's a horror kind of, I was about to say cliche and then I was like, no, it's a horror asset to have a strong female protagonist.
But see, though, these people that complained about not liking Kaylee and like thinking she's annoying or thinking she's like not relatable, that's not really, I don't think they view her as a strong female character. They view her as cocky and stupid. But would they feel the same way if it was a man instead?
Or, I don't know. Maybe men tend to get defined as jerks, whereas women tend to be defined as bitches, or like harpies, or shrill, or so. I mean, we still live in a patriarchal society. Yeah. Although I imagine a lot of people who don't like her, if they're listening to this, they would resent that comment. They would be like, "No, it has nothing to do with that. I don't like this character." To which I would say, challenge yourself. Think about why that is. Is it because you don't like those kinds of women?
And if that's you, please, I want to know. But just saying, oh, I don't like her, that's not an answer. Think about why and try to articulate it. And then maybe you'll come to a conclusion about your own kind of thoughts, and you'll decide if that's worth tweeting out into the world.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's always interesting things to be made of why characters are a certain sex or gender, why they are a certain age. We've talked about how these are early 20-somethings, but acting slightly younger because they have that stunted growth. I do think it's interesting that it's an older sister, younger brother dynamic, and she is more forceful. You mentioned the foster care, and also the fact that he's probably been doped up and therapied out the wazoo and that kind of stuff. But this film would be very different with two girls or two boys. Yeah. And I think that's always a really interesting thing. I don't have anything further to say.
No, I mean, I can't comment on it because I guess because I don't have a brother and I'm not a girl, so I didn't grow up in a family with two sisters. I don't know what that would look like. I would argue that it's probably in this movie a brother sister thing, so that both sides of the audience have someone that they could potentially relate to.
Well, and it also kind of mirrors their junior versions of their parents.
Yes, and I didn't mean to say only boys can relate to boys and only girls can relate to girls, but I just mean that it kind of covers both sides of the spectrum. So that the boys who could relate to a girl or could relate to a boy, everyone has their own kind of person. Yes. Although, as we've discussed,
the bases are covered.
Yeah, exactly. But it's funny that you say it mirrors them because even though it's on the nose, well, no, because even the ending of the movie, because the movie ends with both timelines merging, or not merging, but basically both Tims are being taken away in a cop car. So yeah, but they both timelines mirror each other. Figuratively and literally with a literal laser glass mirror.
Lots of fun stuff with mirrors and reflections and doppelgangers and that kind of stuff in here as well.
Do you like the ghost stuff in the movie? Like, do you like the Kate Siegel Marisol, and do you like the all the ghosts coming out at the very end to like surround the kids?
I admittedly don't love the special effects, but I don't know whether or not to say that that's part of that $5 million budget.
Oh, 100%.
It's not going to get you a huge amount. But I really like when the mom, like when Katie Sackhoff's arms are actually out of the mirror at the end.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that was actually pretty visually interesting, but also it's a good way to be like, hey, just come a little bit closer. And of course, you're like, no, stay away from the fucking mirror.
I know. Oh, okay, wait. First, when the cops like watch on the phone the video of her getting the anchor, and like you just see her arms drop. Oh, it's creepy as fuck.
That's a good one. That's a good effect. That's like some, I want to say dummy work, because I have to assume that's what it was.
Yeah. But regarding the ghosts, I actually just realized this, because again, this is 2014. It's Blumhouse, and look at Insidious, the ghosts in that movie, none of which, to my knowledge, at least in the first one, had any kind of enhanced CGI effects. It looks like stage actors, and that doesn't work for some people. I actually really like that movie, and I like that technique, because even though it does look less ethereal, it's really creepy for me.
But that movie has like smoke, and it's got, kind of like wavy dream logic. Like, it's a very different visual dynamic.
Right.
This feels very realistic with then somebody with some bright shining eyes.
Yeah. Well, because their eyes like are mirrors, but then like I feel like because their face is kind of blue, they kind of have like the black cracks going down their face. There was a particular moment with the Marisol ghosts where I want to say they opened the door, and like I think young Kaylee opens the door, and she's like right there just staring at her.
Yeah, that one's pretty good.
Yeah, and not really a jump scare, because I don't think the music really cues you to make it a jump scare, but I like that. But yeah, I mean, like with all the ghosts holding around them, which is a takeaway from the short film, because that's what happens in the end of the short film. So I can only imagine I would assume that's the only reason they did that.
Well, I kind of also like this idea that the mirror is collecting people. Like it's almost like a treasure chest of souls, where like if you die, you essentially end up getting sucked into this mirror, and it can reuse you later on whenever it needs someone to scare. Because if you pay attention during the rundown of all the people who died, Marisol is one of those people.
She the last owner.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting because that's basically what Hill House is.
Very true.
Because, which again, he does a lot of the same things, like a lot of the same themes, a lot of the same concepts. Doesn't bother me. I guess I can maybe see how people are like, okay, dude, like, give us something else.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like, I don't want this man to leave the horror genre, because I like what he's doing for the genre.
Yeah. I mean, it's a genre that doesn't have a ton of filmmakers who are really invested in heart and family dynamics, and even to a certain extent a little bit of melodrama.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a good thing. Well, it's a good thing that he's here to offer that. Not that it's not a good thing.
Have you read Dr. Sleep?
I have not.
Okay, so
not a huge King fan.
I might have to edit that out. So I don't think Dr. Sleep got very good reviews, but I really enjoyed it because, my edit out moment, I'm not the biggest fan of The Shining, the book. And
you've already said that before.
Oh, okay. Well, then never mind. I'll keep it in. But I really like Dr. Sleep, and it's not, I don't even know if I'd call it a horror novel. It's more kind of like a road trip adventure thriller kind of movie. Oh God, there I am doing the whole thriller horror debate. But I'm really excited to see what he does with it, because I think it's a book that is not perfect, but all the themes that you would expect from Mike Flanagan film are in that book, and I'm excited to see how he expands upon them and like makes them his own.
Well, I feel like Gerald's Game gave us a bit of a solid taster into what he's capable of.
But the thing with Gerald's Game is he read that book. He's like, I think he used the same story in all of his interviews, but he read that book when he was like 19, and that was his one, like, that was his Moby Dick. That was his whatever, like, on a pedestal. Like, he always wanted to make that movie. So that's, years, decades of thinking about this movie. Dr. Sleep came out in 2013. So I'm interested.
Yeah.
It's not something, it's probably a passion project, but it's not on the same level as he had for Gerald's Game. And Gerald's Game is a near perfect film for me. So this is going to be a little bit different, I think, but hopefully just as good.
Right. Yeah. No, it'll be interesting. I mean, he's keeping in the Stephen King canon. He's keeping in the Hill House canon. We'll see. I feel like he's not venturing into projects that are going to convince people who don't like him to check him out or give him another try.
Yeah.
But I think there's enough people who really respect the kinds of things that he's doing and who like his work that he's going to continue to find a good amount of success.
Yeah, which, great. Keep giving him money, and the people that don't like him can go watch other things.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of films that come out every year. Like, if you don't like a Flanagan film, you don't have to check it out. Nobody's putting a gun.
What are you talking about?
to your
There's only Mike Flanagan films coming out this year. I don't know what you're talking about.
Wait, is Flanagan an anagram for Netflix? No.
Oh my god. Well, I mean, the last two things he's done have been on Netflix, and I'm so bummed we'll never get a Blu-ray of Hush or Gerald's Game, but I digress.
Ugh, right. Okay, so I have a question and then a game.
Okay.
So my question is, have you seen Aja's Mirrors? And if so, how does this compare?
I don't know what that is.
Alexandre Aja?
Oh!
Made a film called Mirrors.
No, I saw that in theaters. No, I thought like you really should have said Alexander, because you just said Aja's Mirrors, and I was like, Aja like the drag queen? Oh, that's Raja. Shit. Ugh, never mind. But yes, I have seen that movie.
Who's the idiot now?
I confess that I saw Mirrors. I think was my freshman year of college, maybe the summer after my freshman year of college, and I really enjoyed it. It's not good. It's not a good movie, but it's stupid fun. It's a movie whose rules are very ill defined, and it keeps breaking them.
Okay.
But there's one spoiled in the trailer gore effect with Amy Smart in the bathtub, but these are both very different movies, because like in that movie it's okay, if you look in a mirror, your reflection can do something and it kills you. So you look in your mirror and your reflection will all of a sudden like pick up a shard of glass and slit its throat, which then your throat will be slit.
Oh, I see. Okay, so they're not doing it to you, it's if your reflection does it, then
yes,
it will do it to you.
But the thing that movie does that is stupid is that like Paula Patton, who's the mom, walks into a room that's flooded with water, and her reflection in the water starts doing stuff. So then it's like, okay, well, it's not mirrors, it's reflection.
Yeah, any reflective surface, and you're toast.
Yes. And, I mean, not the biggest problem, because there's like an evil nun in the movie, too, which, ooh, you know what, though? Better movie than The Nun. I'll just say that right now. Or at least more entertaining than The Nun. Not a good movie, but it's fun. But this Oculus is way better, and it's a more I mean, again, like the fucking 10-minute backstory of this mirror is more interesting than the entirety of Mirrors.
All right then.
So that's I like Alexandre Aja, but you know that's not his best work. I mean, his best work I would say is Piranha.
High Tension.
No, it's Piranha. Piranha's like peak Aja for me.
Fair enough.
I like Horns, though.
I mean, we're all still waiting for that weird hurricane alligator movie, right? So.
Oh yeah. Ooh. I don't even remember what it's called. I think it's called like Creeped.
Yeah, it's got a terrible name.
Yeah,
every time I read about it, I'm like, why is it called this?
But it's people trapped in a house during a hurricane with an alligator or a crocodile, like right up my alley. So maybe a Patreon episode if it goes to theaters. Who knows?
Yeah, that's a big if.
Big if. Followed by 47 Meters Down, Uncaged, or whatever it's called.
Okay, game. Your game. This could be a potentially tough one. If you did the sequel, how would you make it different? Because the mirror is still out there. Presumably, it's still killing people. I'm frankly surprised that there isn't a direct-to-video sequel of this film.
I am too, but Jason Blum went on a tear recently with answering people's questions about sequels. And when someone asked about Oculus, and he was like, no. Like, there's not going to be a sequel to that movie.
He was very abrupt in that interview. It was like, is this? No.
Mm-hmm.
No. Just stop asking.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I'm sure it's because he gets
like,
tweeted all the time.
These movies cost him like $4 to $5 million. Yeah. Like, he's got that money under his couch.
I know.
Like,
you know, and I'm never anti-sequel because, you know, a lot of times people are like, well, the first one was so perfect, you just can't make it better. And I'm never really of that mentality, but I literally don't know without going in, I mean, like, without doing Happy Death Day to You type stuff and making it like a totally different movie, I don't really know how you can do this again and make it either just as good or even better.
I would Hellraiser for this shit. I would do the origin story.
I was say like
mixed with like a new story.
No, you go the Ouija and the Annabelle route and you do a prequel and you do like how it started. I get that. But see though, like Hellraiser 4,
it would still be kind of boring. But do
you think? Because I think part of the reason this movie works and is as effective as it is because you don't know. the truth. Like they never tell you about this mirror, like what it is, like how it came to be. Do you think that would kind of retroactively hurt the first one and make the second one less interesting to like know the origins of this mirror?
I think it would depend on how creative the screenwriter gets. You know, if it's something like Hellraiser where it's I called a demon and we had a bunch of sex and our blood dripped on this dumb box.
Ugh.
You're like, I mean, maybe not.
Yeah.
Sidebar, I actually love that movie. So
Bloodline?
Don't come at me for, yeah. I think that movie is cuckoo bananas stupid, but I kind of love it.
I mean,
I'm probably going to make us do it one day.
It's the fourth best Hellraiser movie. So there you go.
I actually prefer it to 3.
Oh, I think 3 is better, but
dumb. Like 3 is such dumb fun.
But like I think it's more fun. I don't mind Bloodline. I think it's like, again, on Hellraiser terms, Bloodline's totally fine, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, this is a steep incline that we're talking
about.
I do think with Oculus, yeah, there's a definite danger. I mean, let's face it, they're never going to make a sequel to this or a prequel. But I think if you went a traditional route and said something like, yeah, you know, it's a possessed or a charmed, or like I disfigured a witch and she cast a spell on my house where I made this mirror, like it could get really bad. But I think if you could find a way to make it interesting, I don't know, like maybe somebody died and their spirit ended up in the mirror, and as a result the mirror is now evil.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I know. Honestly, well, here, listeners, send us your sequel ideas for Oculus, because honestly, like I'm on that level where I'm like, I don't know what you can do. Like, I don't know what you can do for this movie to make a sequel.
Yeah, would it be Tim gets out 10 years later again, and he has to track down the new mirror, or the mirror's new owner, or something like that? Or would you blank slate it? Would you catapult it into the future, go into the past? What would you do?
Yeah, let us know. So yeah, give us your sibling stories, give us your thoughts on this movie, why you like it or why you don't connect with it, and give us your sequel ideas. Ooh, we've given a lot of homework in this episode.
We want all of your intellectual property as well as all your backstories. While you're at it, send us your social security numbers and your middle name.
Yes. Oh, God. Okay, well, are we ready to housekeep?
Yeah, wrap it up.
So yeah, if you want to reach us on Twitter, you can reach me at Traced Thurman.
And I am at BeStoleMyRemote. That's the letter B.
And if you're tweeting about the podcast, please be sure to use the hashtag HorrorQueers in your tweet so we can find you. Or if you want to do something private, not public, you can email us at horrorqueers@gmail.com. And if you do like us and you want more of us, then you can visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/horrorqueers, where you can listen to episodes on us and Happy Death Day to You. And when this episode drops, I don't know what we're going to have, but we'll have 2 episodes in April. And you'll get lots of exclusive content. And yeah, and also on that note, if you're already paying for us, thank you. We love that you think we're worth paying for. So, Joe, what are we covering next week?
Well, it's ironic that we should be talking about sequels because we are headed into sequel territory as well as the past. So we are going to be checking out Psycho 2 from 1983.
Well, I'm really excited for that because, listeners, in case you haven't seen it, Psycho 2 is great, and I think it's kind of having a reappraisal over the past couple years.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Psycho 2 is awesome, and if you haven't seen it, please watch it before next week's episode because it'll be a doozy.
Yeah, it's really good. I'm excited to revisit it. I hope it holds up.
Yeah, me too. But yeah, so I think on that note, we can cross out Oculus.
Yeah, and cross out Horror Queers.
This episode was brought to you by the Bloody Disgusting Podcast Network, delivering your weekly horror podcast fix. To find more episodes of this show and others, please visit bloodydisgusting.com/podcast network.
Get in, losers. This is the Lady Killers, a Feminine Rage podcast. I'm Jen.
I'm Sammy.
I'm Rocco.
And I'm May. Our podcast is a tribute to the female-identifying killers in horror and more.
Each episode will feature us, your Supreme Court of female murderers, discussing our favorite lady killers, from your Julias and Jennifers to your Carries and Christines.
We'll tell her story, decide if it's good for her horror, and answer the most important question of all. Would we die for her?
Join us on Thursdays as we pull on our sweaters, snatch our ice picks, sharpen our scissors, and honor the lady killers who live on the silver screen.
No boys were harmed in the making of this podcast.
Yet.
Hello, I'm Shelby Scott, the host of Scare You to Sleep, a podcast where I tell you spooky bedtime stories full of creepy sound effects and music that is soothing yet unsettling to help immerse you into a world of horror. This is a show for those of us who have realized horror can be a strange but relaxing escape from reality. Speaking of escapes, sometimes I lead you through guided nightmares, like a guided meditation, but instead of flowery meadows, I take you on a journey through your own personal nightmare. So come get lost in the terror with me. Listen to Scare You to Sleep wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us online at bloody.fm. Sweet screams.